presents this program in color.
It's brought to the Timbers Army. Plaza has his second. It's floated beyond the far post. Cooper back into the mix. Is it scrambled in? It's an almighty rocket. And it's there. Oh, pandemonium in Portland.
Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. This is Blake Cousins with breaking news right now. 2 amazing UFO sightings from Portland, Oregon.
When a Cicerone hears a bottle of beer open, do they know what kind of beer is about to be consumed? So welcome to Hoban's Heroes. This is a kind of an experiment, I would say. Podcasting from an unknown location on the Western Seaboard. So, I don't know, is Western Seaboard a word? I know Eastern Seaboard's a thing. I really don't think people say seaboard when it comes to the West Coast, but maybe we do. Maybe somebody out there does. Because no one's going to know who I am. And in an effort to remain anonymous, for all intents and purposes...
My name? You can call me Soccer.
Don't call me Soccer. Like the new Heineken commercial campaign. You can call me Behave. That's what people will call me. And if you really do some digging, you can probably figure out who I am. But why am I doing a podcast? Well, I decided, hey, I wanted to start a platform to talk about the Timbers and soccer in general. And that's what this is. I'm extremely cheap, so as of right now, this will only be found on YouTube. And we'll see where that goes from there. A little basic stuff about me. Who is this guy? Why is he talking about soccer? Why is he talking about the Timbers? Well, that's a fair question. I am mainly currently, my focus on the game is I coach soccer. I'm a youth coach, and I love coaching at the youth level. And so several things we're going to kind of flesh out at varying points are maybe going to be about what it's like to coach youth soccer. And I would love to dialogue with people and kind of do some brainstorming. Maybe we can work together to become better at what we do. So, got the beer poured. That's important. We're about to go into a big quote-unquote derby match, as we like to call it, although NBC did their special on what a derby is, and yes, I'm using air quotes, what a true derby is, and they would like to tell you that it can only be for teams within a city. And yeah, it's just interesting to hear all the different debates and arguments about rivalries in the MLS and whether or not the only true rivalry in MLS is the Timbers-Sounders rivalry. And I would go out on a limb and say I believe it's the most interesting rivalry for sure. So this is kind of an interesting place to begin in kind of the business part of the MLS season. We're getting down to the wire. The MLS All-Star break is over, and pretty much from here on out, all the games are important. And I think this is an exciting time to tune in to MLS. All right, clue number 1, where do I live? Near a railroad track. Do I live on the good side of the tracks or the bad side of the tracks? That's another debate. All right, let's jump into our most recent game against DC United, coast to coast, essentially. At this point, should we have expected Portland Timbers to beat one of the worst Eastern Conference teams on the road? It really didn't surprise me at all. I had to listen to the game via 750 The Game. Whoa, that sounded weird. Yeah, so I had to listen to it on the radio, which kind of was I don't know. It's the second game I've listened to on the radio this season, and I don't know. There's something nostalgic for me about listening to sports on the radio. I remember, for some reason, fondly driving. A lot of times you'd be driving home on a Sunday and tune in to the football game. So unfortunately, driving home to watch was not an option, but maybe fortunately. So nostalgia aside, though, just some quick thoughts on the game. I wasn't able to listen to the whole thing, so I had to go back and watch the highlights later on. But listening up until the point when Birnbaum got that goal, watching the replay from a tactical standpoint, as from a coaching standpoint, Birnbaum should not have gotten that goal. There's no way a center back should be allowed to score with their foot on a corner kick. It was just horrible marking on, unfortunately, I hate this because I do like Ridgewell. So I really don't think Ridgewell expected Boswell to be able to head the ball directly to Birnbaum and subsequently volley the ball, get that volley in there within 12 yards of the goal. But basically he was basically walking, and there's just no excuse for walking in the 18-yard box, especially on a corner. And listening to it, you kind of got the idea. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Like, oh no, it was pretty bad. And Ridgie's run up was just super nonchalant, and it just is unacceptable as a DP, as the captain of the squad. Like, there's no excuse. I don't care if it's hot out. You just can't do that. And that's the thing. It's on a set piece, it's on a corner kick. These are times when you really are super vulnerable. You need to be super alert. You need to be intense. The intensity needs to be there, and it just wasn't there, and that's just unfortunate. So that is going to be a huge factor in this upcoming game at Seattle. I really, really hope that they can work on that intensity. Maybe the heat won't be as much of a factor, which will be good. It's going to come down to that defensive four and our center backs for sure. And it's looking like we're going to be starting Steven Taylor, and we'll get to that later. Sorry. So second goal, bad coordination between Powell and Taylor. That would be Jermaine Taylor, of course. Most of you know that. It looked like Taylor got caught out of position, had his back to the ball as it got to Acosta, and Powell couldn't get in front of the ball. He was I think he was just outside of the 18-yard box to the left of the goal. He scrambled, tried to get in front of the ball, but it was super quick, and there was just no stopping it at that point. The real breakdown, I think, from what I saw, the real breakdown was the fact that, unfortunately, Taylor was out of position. I think he got sucked into the ball up top, and, excuse me, because I don't remember who got the assist on that, but Acosta was floated, behind him. Powell was covering, but like I said, coaching 101, player 101, never let the offensive player in between you and the goalpost, essentially, and Powell unfortunately failed in that department. Second goal, it was too much for us to overcome, and we fly back with no points. We didn't even leave any points on the field, which in some ways makes it a little easier to swallow. It's like, no, we just got outplayed. DC showed up. They wanted that home win. They got it, and that's all there is to it. So the good news is we're still above the red line. Sporting drew, which keeps them within 3 points. So Sporting, who cares? Screw them. So I watched Real Salt Lake versus Sounders from last week. It was interesting to watch the Sounders play RSL, and personally don't have a problem with Real Salt Lake. I think they're an interesting team. I really like Kyle Beckerman, and so obviously don't like the Sounders, so I was kind of hoping Real would win it, but yeah, that didn't happen. So instead got to see Ladero really inject some life into this seemingly lifeless Sounders team, and a lot of a lot of Timbers fans were writing them off as basically being no better than an NASL team. And I think it really sucks going into our Cascadia Cup match with them that they're not looking like an NASL team anymore. They're looking like a legit MLS team that should be closer to the top instead of really basically at the bottom. As of right now, Houston edged a little bit closer. They're still on the bottom, but it's crazy for me that Seattle had been sitting on an open DP spot for so long because of previous obligations. Ladero couldn't come in sooner, and that's probably a good thing for us. It sounds like he came in and really took ownership of the locker room, and when they were talking about him, that he basically called out Seattle for horsing around in the locker room, not having a team spirit. Everybody was kind of doing their own thing. It sounded a lot like, I remember hearing about Southampton last year. Ronald Koeman enacted kind of a zero smartphone policy at practices and games, and he said that he doesn't like how players just put on their headphones and they're off in their own world, they're off doing their own thing. They need to worry more about communicating, because on the field, communication is key. And I'm not looking forward to having to play Seattle with an informed Ladero in the mix. And I know there's talks that he might not be there for the following game in Portland. And you always say, hey, I want to play the best squad, unless you're Alexi Lawless talking about the U.S. men's national team, because he constantly is pointing out how anytime an opponent has an injury, anytime an opponent has some bad luck, it's always good for the U.S., good for the U.S. It's like, come on. After all these years, I want to see the U.S. men's national team beat a team at full strength. Another digression, I apologize. If you haven't listened to Total Soccer, the Total Soccer show, you should check it out this week. They just did a preview of the upcoming Timbers Sounders match. They pointed out a very sobering statistic that the Timbers have not won an away match since we lifted the MLS Cup. Let's just marinate on that fact for a second. The question is, does Steven Taylor start? How does he fit in to this team in a pretty big match, our biggest rivalry? I really don't think he's going to be fazed by the atmosphere. I think he'll soak it up, to be honest. But I think, as Taylor Rockwell pointed out, that he will struggle probably on artificial turf. As far as him being in form, his last top flight start, I know he played a couple of T2 games, at least one T2 game. He was involved in Newcastle beating Tottenham Hotspur 5-1. So that's good. Tottenham, as you know, were pretty close to winning the Premier League. They ended up choking, much to my delight. I'm going to just say one quick thing. As exciting as it was with knowing that so many players from the Portland Thorns were on the U.S. women's national team, it didn't have that Barcelona, Real Madrid effect that the successes had with the Spanish national team. And who knows why that was. I really think it came down to Jill Ellis. I think she's been hyped up way too much. Super bummed for Christen Press. I don't think she deserved to bear the brunt of criticisms for missing that PK. I think, pretty sure that this was pointed out also on Total Soccer Show, which is probably one of the best soccer podcasts for me personally, because I do look at things more from a coaching perspective. I love how they break down games. It looked like what basically it seemed like, if you guys didn't already hear this or if people were curious, it looked like the U.S. women's national team were kind of alternating, going from right to left on their spot kicks, and I think Christen Press got into her head and thought maybe she should go down the middle, try to go above Sweden's goalie, and unfortunately she just skied it over the crossbar, and it's unfortunate. We all wanted to see U.S. women bring home the gold. It happens to the best of them, and I remember reading some comments on Twitter or Instagram or something where it was like, oh, who missed their penalties? And it's like, come on. A, you didn't watch the game. You don't get to criticize. and B, Messi missed his PK in the Copa. It happens to the best of them. Still, she did way better than Zaza did in that penalty shootout with Italy versus Germany. That was the most terrible thing I've ever seen when it comes to penalties. And I really don't think Christen should hang her head at all. In fact, I would love to see her come play for the Thorns. Why not? We're not going to get Pew. Let's get Press. I don't know. Just a thought. Anyways, thanks for checking out the first episode of Hoban's Heroes. It was brought to you by a very delicious, tasty glass of Full Sail Classic IPA. And we will catch you on the flip side of the Timbers-Sounders match. And cheers, and let's go Timbers.